Holger Rune never meant to say it, but once those words left his mouth, once that involuntary smile crossed his face, once her name hung in the air between him and that journalist, there was absolutely no taking it back. A casual interview, a simple throwaway question about fellow players, and then he said her name, Alex Eala. The way he paused, the way his eyes shifted, the way his entire demeanor changed in that split second. The tennis world noticed everything. And what happened next would transform a private admiration into the sport's most talked about revelation, sparking debates about respect, recognition, and what happens when two young stars carrying the weight of their nations suddenly find themselves at the center of an internet firestorm neither of them asked for. In the world of professional tennis, there are players who carry more than just their own dreams onto the court. They carry the hopes of entire nations, the expectations of millions, the burden of being the sole representative of their country at the highest level of an individual sport. That weight is crushing. It's isolating. It's something only a handful of athletes in the world truly understand. Holger Rune, the Danish sensation with the fiery temperament and devastating backhand, had become exactly that for Denmark. At just 21 years old, he'd already smashed his way into the ATP top 10, defeated multiple Grand Slam champions, and established himself as one of men's tennis's most exciting and explosive young talents. His rise wasn't just meteoric, it was necessary. Denmark hadn't produced a tennis star of this magnitude in generations, and Rune wore that responsibility like armor, playing every match as if the honor of his entire country depended on the outcome. Across the tennis universe in the WTA circuit, another young player was experiencing her own form of pressure-filled stardom. Alex Eala, the Filipino trailblazer, had become more than just a tennis player to the Philippines. She was a symbol, a pioneer, a living embodiment of possibility for a nation that had never before seen one of its own succeed at the highest levels of tennis. She was the first Filipino to win a Grand Slam title at any level when she captured the U.S. Open Girls Singles Championship, the first to break into the WTA Top 200, then the Top 150, then the Top 100. Every single match she played wasn't just about rankings or prize money, it was about proving that a nation of over 110 million people belonged in the upper echelons of professional tennis. Their paths had crossed occasionally at combined ATP-WTA events. The professional tennis circuit is smaller and more interconnected than people realize. The same hotels, the same practice facilities, the same player lounges where future Hall of Famers sit next to hopeful qualifiers, eating the same catered meals and sharing the same ice baths. Rune and Eala existed in overlapping circles, occupying the same physical spaces at tournaments around the world, but never quite sharing the same spotlight. He was the temperamental genius fighting for Masters 1000 titles and Grand Slam breakthroughs. She was the determined barrier breaker grinding through WTA 125 tournaments and working her way up the main tour one hard-fought victory at a time. But here's what made their dynamic absolutely fascinating to anyone paying attention. They represented the exact same archetype in completely different contexts. Both were carrying national expectations that would absolutely crush lesser athletes. Both had achieved breakthrough success at impossibly young ages, and were now navigating the treacherous, unforgiving waters of living up to early promise. Both possessed that rare combination of technical brilliance and mental fortitude that separates the merely good from the potentially great. And both, whether they admitted it publicly or not, understood the unique loneliness of being your country's sole representative at the highest level of an individual sport, where there's nowhere to hide and no one to share the burden. The tennis community, despite being spread across every continent and encompassing hundreds of players from dozens of countries, is remarkably tight-knit. Players notice each other. They watch each other's matches in locker rooms while getting treatment from physios. They share practice courts and fitness trainers. They pass each other in hotel corridors at 3 in the morning when jet lag makes sleep impossible. They understand, in ways that outsiders and even family members never fully could, exactly what the person across the net or across the locker room is experiencing, feeling, and sacrificing. So when young players achieve something remarkable, when they break through barriers or win matches they weren't supposed to win, their peers take notice. When Alex Eala won crucial matches or broke new ground for Filipino tennis, other young players on tour saw it. They watched the highlights. They checked the scores. They understood the significance in ways the general public might not. And Holger Rune, despite playing on a different circuit, despite the geographic and competitive distance between men's and women's tennis, despite having his own career pressures and goals to worry about, was one of those players paying attention to Alex Eala's journey. Nobody knew just how much attention he'd been paying. Not his team. Not the media. Not the tennis gossip accounts that track every player interaction. Not until that interview. Not until the moment his carefully maintained professional facade slipped just enough to reveal something genuine, something unguarded, something that felt to everyone watching like far more than simple professional respect. Because in tennis, as in life, it's often the unscripted moments that tell the truest stories. The moments when preparation fails and authenticity breaks through. The moments when an athlete forgets for just a second that everything they say will be analyzed, dissected, and transformed into content. This is the story of one of those moments, and what it revealed about admiration, pressure, and two young athletes navigating unprecedented attention neither of them saw coming. It was supposed to be a completely routine press obligation, the kind of interview that Holger Rune had done literally hundreds of times before without a second thought. A post-practice media session at a Masters 1000 event, the type where journalists ask predictable questions and players deliver carefully rehearsed answers that reveal absolutely nothing interesting while technically fulfilling their contractual media requirements. The setting was casual, a shaded area near the practice courts with the rhythmic sound of tennis balls echoing in the background as other players went through their routines. Rune sat in his practice gear, relaxed, towel draped around his neck, seemingly ready to breeze through another 15 minutes of standard tennis talk before getting back to the actual work of preparing for his next match. The journalist started with the expected questions, the ones that appear in every single pre-tournament interview. His preparation for the event, his thoughts on his draw, his recovery from a minor knee issue that had kept him out of the previous tournament. Rune answered with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this dance 1,000 times before. Yes, he felt good. Yes, the knee was completely fine. Yes, he was looking forward to the challenge. Standard, professional, completely forgettable. Then came the question that changed absolutely everything. Holger, you've spoken before about watching other young players on tour and learning from different styles. With the WTA side also here this week for the combined event, are there any rising women's players whose games you admire or pay attention to? It was meant to be a throwaway question, the kind designed to fill time and maybe generate a nice quote about tennis's next generation that could be used in a feel-good feature article. The journalist probably expected Rune to mention Coco Gauff, the obvious choice, or maybe Mira Andreeva, the Russian teenager everyone was talking about. The safe names, the expected names, the players everyone was already discussing. But Holger Rune didn't give the obvious answer. Instead, he paused. And it wasn't a normal pause, not the brief moment athletes take to formulate a diplomatic response or remember a name. This was different, longer. His eyes moved slightly to the left, the way people's eyes involuntarily do when they're accessing genuine memory rather than reciting prepared talking points. And then he smiled, not his usual press conference smile, the one that's professional and measured and reveals nothing. This smile was different, involuntary, almost embarrassed. The smile of someone who's just been asked about something they actually care about and hasn't had time to put their professional mask back on. Alex Eala, he said, and the name came out softer than his previous answers, with a warmth that was immediately, unmistakably noticeable to anyone actually listening. I think what she's doing for Filipino tennis is incredible. The way she fights in every match, the way she's had to qualify and work her way through smaller tournaments to get opportunities at the main tour level, it's really impressive. The journalist, to their credit, sensed something. You could hear it in the follow-up question, the slight edge of curiosity entering their voice, the awareness that they might have stumbled onto something more interesting than the standard interview they'd expected. You follow her results? Another pause. Rune shifted in his seat, and for a split second, the confident top 10 player looked exactly like what he actually was. A 21-year-old who'd just been asked about someone he clearly thought about more than he'd intended to reveal. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of us do, he said, and then continued in a way that would become absolutely crucial to what happened next. She has a really complete game. Her movement is excellent, and her mental strength, especially in tight matches, that's something you can't coach. You either have it or you don't. She has it. Here's what made this moment truly extraordinary: the specificity. Holger Rune wasn't offering generic praise. He wasn't saying she's talented or she works hard. The empty phrases athletes use when they don't actually follow someone's career but want to seem supportive. He was referencing specific aspects of Eala's game: her movement, her mental toughness in pressure situations. These weren't observations from watching one viral highlight clip. This was the detailed technical analysis of someone who'd watched her matches, multiple matches, enough to form genuine opinions about her strengths and playing style. The journalist, now fully aware they'd struck gold, pressed forward. Have you two ever practiced together or talked about tennis? Rune's expression shifted again. He was clearly aware now that this line of questioning had ventured somewhere he hadn't anticipated, that he'd revealed more than he'd intended. We've talked a few times at tournaments, just, player lounge stuff. But she's really dedicated. I respect that. And then he added the sentence that would become the most analyzed, most discussed, most debated statement in tennis social media for the next week. She's someone I think is going to surprise a lot of people. She has everything it takes to break into the top 50, maybe higher. And when she does, people will realize how special she is. When she does, not if. When. That certainty. That specific prediction. That personal investment in another player's future success. That was the moment the interview transformed from routine media obligation into something the tennis internet would obsess over for days. The interview continued for a few more minutes, returning to safer topics like his serve technique and tournament strategy. But the damage or the revelation, depending on your perspective, was already done. The words were out there. The tone had been noticed. The smile had been captured on video. Within an hour, the clip was online. Within 2 hours, it had been shared across tennis Twitter, tennis Instagram, tennis TikTok, every corner of the tennis internet where fans gather to discuss, debate, and dissect every tiny detail of their favorite sport. Within 3 hours, Filipino tennis fans had created compilation videos with titles like "Holger Rune respects Alex Eala," set to emotional music. Within 6 hours, tennis gossip accounts were posting side-by-side photos of Rune and Eala, with caption after caption speculating about what this really meant. Holger Rune had accidentally done something that professional athletes are meticulously trained never to do. He'd revealed something genuine, something personal, something that felt to everyone watching like significantly more than just professional respect between peers. The tennis internet was about to absolutely lose its mind, and this was only the beginning of a story that would spark debates about respect, recognition, media coverage, gender dynamics in sports, and the fine line between admiration and invasion of privacy. If there's one thing tennis fans excel at, one skill they've honed to absolute perfection through years of off-season boredom and rain delays, it's detective work. And when Holger Rune's interview dropped, when that clip started circulating through every tennis community online, the tennis internet transformed into something resembling an elite crime scene investigation unit. Except instead of solving murders, they were solving the mystery of exactly how deep Rune's admiration for Alex Eala actually went, and how long it had been going on without anyone noticing. It started simply enough on Twitter, as these things always do. A Filipino tennis fan account posted the interview clip with the caption, "Holger speaking about Alex Eala with that smile. I see you, Holger." Within minutes, the quote tweets began rolling in, each one adding another layer of observation, another detail noticed, another connection made. The way he paused before saying her name, he really said when she does, not if she does. I'm screaming. Professional athletes don't talk about other players like this unless there's something more going on. But the real investigation, the deep dive that would uncover connections nobody had previously noticed, began when someone decided to scroll back through Holger Rune's social media history with the specific goal of finding every interaction he'd ever had with Eala. And that's when things got genuinely interesting. A user found a post from 7 months earlier, a practice photo Eala had shared from a training session in Spain. It was a standard athlete post, her mid-swing, caption about working hard, a few sponsor tags. Nothing remarkable, except buried in the comments, 73 comments down where nobody would normally scroll, was a simple fire emoji from Holger Rune's verified account. At the time, nobody had noticed. Rune had 800,000 followers. Eala had about 200,000. One emoji from one athlete to another could easily disappear into the noise of social media interaction. But now, in the context of that interview, in the light of his obvious familiarity with her game, that single emoji felt like evidence of something that had been hiding in plain sight. Then someone found another interaction. A story Eala had posted 5 months ago celebrating her first WTA main draw victory. She'd tagged the tournament and a few sponsors, nothing unusual. But according to a screenshot that somehow leaked from someone on Eala's close friends list, Holger Rune's account was among the story viewers. Instagram doesn't publicly show story views to everyone, but this screenshot was now circulating as proof that Rune had been following her career, watching her posts, paying attention in ways nobody had realized. The detective work intensified. A tennis photographer's archive buried deep in their Instagram feed from months ago revealed a photo from Indian Wells, one of the combined ATP WTA events, where both tours compete at the same venue. It was a background shot of practice courts, not focused on any particular player. But there, clearly visible if you looked carefully, were Holger Rune and Eala both waiting for courts, engaged in what appeared to be genuine conversation. They were laughing. The body language was relaxed, familiar. The photo had been taken 4 months ago. It had received maybe 40 likes when originally posted, lost in the endless stream of practice court content that fills tennis photography accounts. Now it was being shared thousands of times with captions like, "They've been talking," and "Look at how he's looking at her," and endless speculation about what they might have been discussing. YouTubers who specialized in covering tennis drama began creating videos with increasingly dramatic titles. Holger Rune's secret crush exposed, read one thumbnail. Why Eala has ATP players' attention, read another. The algorithm did its work, pushing these videos to hundreds of thousands of tennis fans who might never have heard of either player before this moment, suddenly invested in a narrative of young tennis stars and potential romance. TikTok became its own entire ecosystem of speculation and content creation. Video editors created romantic montages using footage from Rune's matches, cut together with footage from Eala's matches, set to trending songs about secret admiration and unspoken feelings. One particularly viral video compared their playing styles, noting surprising similarities in their court positioning and shot selection, suggesting that maybe, possibly, they'd discussed strategy together. That video got 2.3 million views. Reddit's tennis community, always more analytical and detail-oriented than other platforms, created a mega-thread titled "The Rune-Eala Situation: Everything We Know." Users compiled every interaction, every possible connection, every tournament where they'd been in the same city at the same time. Someone discovered they'd both trained briefly at the Muradoglu Academy years ago, though at different times, leading to speculation about whether they'd heard of each other even back then. Someone else found an old interview where Eala mentioned practicing against male players to improve her game and develop her power. Could Rune have been one of them? The Filipino tennis community was experiencing something entirely unprecedented. Eala had put their country on the tennis map through her achievements, her Grand Slam junior title, her steady WTA ranking climb, her role as a pioneer. But this was different. This was one of the ATP's biggest young stars, a top 10 player, publicly praising her with a level of specificity and warmth that felt deeply personal. Filipino sports talk shows devoted entire segments to debating what it meant. Morning radio programs in Manila discussed it. It wasn't just tennis news anymore, it was entertainment news, relationship news, national pride news, all rolled into one irresistible story. But not everyone was celebrating. And as the speculation reached fever pitch, as the content creation machine went into overdrive, a backlash began to form that would raise serious questions about how this entire situation was being covered and what it revealed about deeper problems in tennis media. Some of Eala's most dedicated fans began questioning why this was even a story worth this level of attention. "She's an incredible player on her own," one viral tweet read. "She doesn't need validation from a male player to be worthy of attention." The fact that this is what finally gets her international recognition is honestly sad. The tweet got 15,000 likes and sparked an entirely secondary debate about whether the overwhelming attention on Rune's comments was actually undermining Eala's individual achievements by making her notable only in relation to a man's opinion of her, rather than her own merit. Danish fans had their own complicated reactions. Some found it endearing that their tennis star showed this genuine human side, that he wasn't just a competitive machine, but someone who noticed and appreciated other players. Others worried it was becoming a distraction. Holger should focus on his game, not on WTA players, read one comment on a Danish tennis forum. He's had an inconsistent season. This is the last thing he needs dominating his media coverage. Tennis journalists, the professionals who actually cover the sport for major outlets and have seen thousands of player interactions over decades of reporting, found themselves in an unusual position. Was this a legitimate story worth covering? One respected reporter tweeted, "I've covered tennis for 20 years. Players admire each other all the time. But the way Rune spoke about Eala, that combination of specific technical knowledge and genuine personal investment in her future success, I've honestly never heard one player talk about another quite like that." The speculation reached an absolute fever pitch when someone discovered that both Rune and Eala were entered in an upcoming combined event in 2 weeks. The possibility of them being at the same tournament, potentially giving interviews where they might be asked about each other, potentially being photographed together with everyone now watching, became the tennis internet's most anticipated subplot of the entire season. Fan accounts began countdown clocks. 14 days until Rune and Eala are at the same tournament. Betting markets that normally only covered match outcomes began taking wagers on whether they'd be photographed together. The whole situation had taken on a life completely beyond anything either player could have anticipated. But here's what absolutely nobody expected. The serious backlash that was building, the critical voices that would force everyone to examine whether this obsession was actually harmful, invasive, and revealing of deep problems in how tennis, and particularly women's tennis, gets covered.